Divorce happens. In fact, it happens to almost 50% of first marriages. So let's talk about it. Welcome to Divorce Happens, a podcast to educate, inspire, support, and yes, make you laugh through divorce and beyond so that you can start fresh on the next phase of your journey. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh.
You get divorced. You get divorced.
Getting divorced?
I'm getting a divorce.
You're getting a divorce.
Because she's getting a divorce.
So what if I get divorced?
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Divorce Happens, the podcast where we support you before, during, and after divorce with education, inspiration, and a little bit of laughter. Because as you know, divorce happens and then you start fresh. And we're here today with Sarah to talk about a couple different things. Sarah, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Sarah Vacchiano. I'm based in LA. I'm an entertainment lawyer. It's my day job, and now a writer, and the mom of a now 4-year-old. So that is, and I just have to say that divorce did not seem to happen when I was getting divorced at 26. And I'm incredibly envious of your listeners having the opportunity to normalize, like have this community. It's just such an incredible gift that this
Thank you.
exists.
Yeah, it exists because I was the same. I had two friends who were a little older than me, who were going through it, and that was my people, And I always say we could talk about this more, but I come from a divorced family, and even that didn't really help. So
No.
because everybody's story is different. So let's talk about the book first, because I'm a big fan, and I love when people get to write a book and that's not necessarily their career choice. And so talk to us for a second before we jump into everything you learned from your divorce. What did you write and why did you write it?
So I wrote a book called Soft Launch, a coming-of-adulthood story. And I called it a coming-of-adulthood story because I felt like the experience of being divorced in my late 20s and starting over as I was about to turn 30, single for the first time as an adult, not really knowing who I was, good on paper, emotionally messy everywhere else, was it wasn't a coming of age story anymore. It felt like I was long past the absolution of the coming of age years. And so I wanted to write a story that reflected the experience that I was having as a fully formed adult in many ways, but having to go back and relearn a lot or learn for the first time even, or experience for the first time things in adulthood, personal things, identity, career, personal, all of it, before I could become the person that I really wanted to be. And so I wrote the book because it started out as therapy in a way. I moved to New York in 2012, when I started my job as a lawyer, right after I graduated from law school and took the bar. And I was swimming in this world of like very powerful people, very impressive women, especially, who all seemed to have some sense of self that was very different than the sense of self that I had, because they had had different experiences in their 20s than I had had.
Mm.
I'd skipped over a lot of those experiences. And I wanted to write through my feelings, and I wanted to tell what I thought was an interesting, unique story of someone who completely changed their life as they were about to turn 30. And then I wrote it over a period of 10 years. And so the story itself unfolded as my life unfolded, both personally and professionally. So there's a lot of real life career experiences in there. Molly Bloom, if anyone's a fan of Molly's Game, that was she was one of the first clients that I had as a baby lawyer in New York. And so our friendship is sort of an anchor in the book and helps the evolution of the main character that I based on myself. But in real life, that was really my experience as well. And the book takes you through the first year of her life after getting divorced and moving to New York City and starting over.
Yeah, it is the ultimate fresh start book, I would say. And I read it and it's so good. It's such a great beach read. And I love that it's like divorce related. Like it's so exciting, to think one of the passions that we have over here, especially one of mine, is representation, right? We need better representation of divorce in movies and media and books. And it is a fresh start, as we say. So I love it. This is a fantastic, like, if you're a fan of any of the famous chick lit fun beach reads out there, you'll love this one. It's like a Netflix movie, but in a book. So I love that. So soft launch, which we'll put the link in the show notes. But let's talk about your divorce. So you were divorced in your early 20s?
I got married right before I turned 22, and then in real life, I got divorced. I was separated at 26, and then
Okay.
it became finalized probably right before I turned 27.
Yeah, yeah.
Very young, yeah. And I grew up in a very, I mean, I wouldn't even say suburban. I would say provincial. Like we lived in a very, very, very small town, mostly farmland in Southwest Virginia.
Mm,
My dad is from Italy and, had those roots, and found sort of the equivalent in the US, of the town he grew up in outside of Naples. And so a lot of the people I grew up with, it wasn't an odd thing to get married at 20 or 21, right? Like that was not necessarily different than the experience of my peers. But then the life that I went on to have, I say this a lot. I was searching for stability. I grew up with my mother was very mentally ill. My dad was this very traditional, like Italian patriarchal. And I wanted to, from the time I was 7, really, life was very chaotic and unpredictable. And so I found myself as I was in my late teens and early 20s, really gravitating towards relationships to find stability. And my first husband was a wonderful person who had grown up with an incredible family.
mm,
And I sort of saw that as like the example of what I wanted. And I was able to tell myself because of my experience growing up where I did and around the people that I did that that was the life that I wanted. And in reality, I wasn't I didn't know myself well enough to have made that decision that early, but I thought that I did, as we all do,
yeah,
right? It's like
yeah.
I know what I need. And so in chasing the stability that I wanted and building my own life apart from the life that I grew up in, I chose to get married. And the irony with getting married that young, when you're looking for stability that I now know is that I he really gave me that foundational sense of self and stability to then peep my head out and be like, okay, like what do I really want from my life? Like who am I
Mm,
really? You know? So
mm,
so it was bait and switch is such a negative word, but I was so young and I didn't know myself that
yeah.
having made that decision and then completely evolving past that decision in a way that impacted his life because then, we grew apart very quickly once I realized that there was still so much life left on the table. Um, and then I started law school and we were together my first year and a half. And then, we lived
Yeah.
apart both summers in law school. My world just got bigger and bigger. Um, and and I and I knew what the only decision was for me was to get divorced.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that it was an easy decision at all. It was one of the
No.
hardest decisions that I ever made.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So, what would you say is something that you took away from that you learned from this experience? And I really love what you said about like the peeping your head out. I feel like my experience was similar. Like I didn't know. It took me many years to even like kind of realize the trauma from my childhood and all of these things, right? That it was seeing it reflected in my marriage that really brought out a lot of that. So, other than that, which I love the way you eloquently described that. I mean, no wonder you're a great writer. What did you learn from the divorce in your life?
I mean, I think now it's interesting because I finished the book when I was 30. Sorry, I finished the book when I was 40. I started
Okay,
it when I was 30.
right.
So really, like there was this entire 10-year period of life that happened as I was writing the book. And I finished it. I sold it when I was 40, and I went back to edit it. And in editing a book that I'd started when I was really emotionally adrift and had no idea who I was or, what I wanted out of life and what life wanted from me. Um, the biggest thing that I learned was that I needed to embrace the selfishness that I was so desperately trying to shake off, because I felt guilt over leaving a marriage that was good on paper also, right? He
Mm-hmm.
was wonderful. There was no real reason other than the fact that I had changed. And so there was this like feeling of shame and selfishness. Um, women I think are we're not supposed to leave marriages. We're not supposed to prioritize self over motherhood. We're not supposed to prioritize career over family. Like those are just the things that we grew up with, especially if you grew up where I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was so unwilling to sit with these feelings of being selfish that I was like running away from it. And what I realized when I went back and edited the book is that I needed to be selfish. I needed to be quote unquote unlikable to some people, right? I needed to make those missteps and be okay with that in order to get to the other side. I didn't get remarried till I was 37. I didn't have my child until I was 37. I wouldn't have been ready for any of that if I hadn't gone through that incredibly messy, selfish period of my life. And I think like it is one thing to say that now because, I have the perspective and I have the thicker skin to be able to be a little bit more vulnerable. I don't think I would have been able to be that comfortable when I first started writing the book. Um, but I think that even if like women in their 20s and early 30s, we it's hard to have that perspective just to hear it from someone else who's
Mm-hmm.
been there and who's giving you permission to, not be an asshole, but like,
Yeah.
but to do what you need to do because you're not going to be a good partner. You're not going to be a good friend unless you can do that for yourself first. Right.
Yeah.
And so just kind of acknowledging that selfishness is almost like a real component and a real foundational aspect to experiencing the growth that we all want and finding the life that we want.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the word selfishness, which is a hard word for everybody to say, is i- at its root almost like a shameful word, right? Like we put so much onto it, right? And so as I'm listening to you, I'm like, oh, well, we could even reframe that into like you're prioritizing yourself, right? Because people, especially women that are looked at as selfish, right, is such a negative, like blasphemy type thing, right? I love that, and I think that you know, sometimes I get people that ask me the question, like, what would you tell younger women, right, about like marriage or this or that? And I think a lot of it is like you have to prioritize your joy, right, and your happiness. And if you're not going to be feeling safe in a relationship or whatever it is, even just to say your thoughts out loud, then that's not a friendship. It's not a relationship. It's not a place for you. So I appreciate that. So who would you say should be picking up this book this summer and reading Soft Launch?
I mean, it's funny. It's really been it's been well received by a much broader demographic than I would have thought.
Yeah.
I originally felt like, okay, like, think of me as your kind of older, wiser big sister who has been through it, and is now telling the story. A lot of women in their like 50s and 60s have like also enjoyed it. It is a total throwback. It's a nostalgic read for those early aughts, like
Mhm.
New York working girl, making it all happen. Um,
Yeah.
I think there's also a big contingency of readers who don't necessarily want romance, but want there to be a romantic element, but want it to be more a story of self discovery.
Yeah.
And soft launch, there is like a relationship and there's some romance and there's some spiciness to it, but it's not a
Yeah.
romance. It is very much her journey of experiencing like this like young divorce and then starting over. So I don't know. I think like it's for fans of the Devil Wears Prada, going all the way back to
Yeah.
that, the Emily Giffin, the Something Borrowed.
Jennifer Weiner books. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It
Absolutely.
transports you back.
Yeah. Well,
And if
we
you love
wore
New York,
I was gonna say I was also in that time period in New York. We wore a lot of vests. We wore a lot of vests. That's what I have a lot of pictures of myself flitting around New York City with vests and ballet flats, like in the middle of New York City.
yeah.
That's just why my feet hurt all the time.
Oh my
Um,
god.
I am such a fan of the book. We're obviously going to put it in the show notes. I just am so when your team reached out and they were like, we have this book about, it's like a rom com type, book about this fresh start journey and it's about divorce. I love that because a lot of people do have first marriages in their 20s and we seem to shame them like they made a bad decision or they made a mistake. But like we always say, divorce happens. It's just part of life. You know, you move on. That's a thing you take with you as you move on. You learn from it and you really do take the lessons from it. I have a question for you. What from your divorce did you implement into being a lawyer?
Oh, it's really funny. I don't know if funny is the right word, but so, you graduate from law school and then you spend that entire summer studying for the bar exam. You take the bar exam at the end of July. And the day that my divorce was finalized, what just so happened to coincide with the day that the bar prep course was teaching divorce law. It was like, you can't make
Meant
this
to
up.
be.
Yes. And so I don't know. I, I think that probably the social emotional elements that I didn't have when I got
Mm,
divorced, but that I grew into because of my divorce. The comfortability with like having differing points of view. Um, there, two things can be true at once, right? Like it can be true that he was a wonderful person and not the person for me.
yeah.
Um, that I think has made me a much more balanced lawyer. Um, but really like the social emotional part of it, and that's made me a better friend, partner, everything.
Yeah.
But I think you learn a lot from sitting with the discomfort of a failure and processing the shame of something that you think is not supposed to happen, even though divorce does happen.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm probably like, I think my EQ at this point way outweighs my
Mm.
IQ.
I was gonna say too, I think that there's an element I mean, you're an entertainment lawyer, so there's an element of divorce that is a show, right? Like, that is kind of a production that you're putting on, I would think, which brings me to my other question, what are the pictures behind you?
Oh, okay. So I work for United Artists, which is, this iconic studio that Charlie Chaplin and Mary Pickford started in 1919. It was the first independent studio. And United Artists was behind pretty much so many movies that none of us even realized. And West Side Story, from the time I was 7, I knew I wanted to work in entertainment and film because of West Side Story. So these are actual stills from West Side Story,
Mm,
from the shoot, which were in the United Artists archives. And I still can't believe like that this is where I go to work every day and this is what I look at when I get here because it was
yeah,
so foundational to like my entire what I always knew I wanted to do had to be in some way adjacent to film.
I love
So
that.
yeah, it's a West Side Story.
I recognized it, but I wanted the audience to know.
Yeah.
But I'm a Guys and Dolls girl. The Guys and
Oh,
Dolls was my foundation. But also, I want to say it's the second time today that Mary Pickford came up in conversation. Weird. I have to go look that one up. Okay.
that is wild. I just read
Very
her
weird.
bio. I have
Oh,
her
that's
bio
so
right
weird. I
here.
was just talking about her. My stepdad was talking about her today.
Here she is. Look, look, look. Not
Okay,
that we're plugging
maybe
Mary
Mary,
Pickford, but
maybe she needs us to talk about her. Mary, we hear you.
she did what she had to do.
Well, then you know what? I'm gonna go listen to that audiobook. I love that. Sarah, you're a delight. I'm so excited about this book. I cannot wait to see what else comes out of this.
Thank
Maybe
you.
some movies, maybe some more. Maybe we'll have to talk about that. We have some
Stay
ideas.
tuned.
Absolutely. Well, please go check out Soft Launch. It's a great book, and it's a great book to give a friend, like on their divorce registry, or if they're
Oh, oh
going
my
through something.
God.
Yeah,
Damn, I
yeah,
really got
perfect.
divorced in the wrong decade.
Hey,
Um,
I always joke, people are like, "Oh, you're the founder of the first divorce registry." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I never had one. I had to make a whole company to let other people do that, but I never had a registry." So, I get it, man.
that's
Um,
incredible. Thank you
and,
for everything that you're
yeah.
doing.
No, I appreciate it. And I love that you are remarried and you have a child and you have had your fresh start journey as well. Where did you meet your spouse, by the way? I
At
love this
work.
question. Okay.
Yes.
Well,
So
there you go.
Charlie in the book I moved him up in the timeline. I didn't meet him that
Okay.
early in my career in New York, but we were colleagues later in my career, and that is where we met. We're both entertainment
I like
writers.
that now I know that the book has this, like, memoir-ish element to it.
Yeah.
It's gonna make the movie so much more fun to watch. So I'm just guessing. Sarah, we appreciate you. Please stay in touch, of
Thank
course,
you.
and, go read Soft Launch. Before we let you go, though, my last question always, If somebody's listening to this and they're going through a divorce, what would be some words of encouragement you could leave them with?
It's always going to be better than if you hadn't done it, truly. And you will get to the other side, but the only way to that other side is through. I always quote this Rainer Maria Rilke quote, which is, don't feel uncomfortable with your questions about life because you're not ready to answer them. You have to live your way into the answer. And I feel like divorce is like the perfect example of like, you have to live your way into the life that you want. And it's only through going through the motions and going through the experience of it. And so live your way, live the questions and live your way into the answer.
I love it. Only great words from a writer over here. Amazing. Thanks so much, Sarah. Divorce Happens is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the only divorce registry platform for everything you need to begin again, including home items, hype team, and everything in between. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh. We're here to support you before, during, and after divorce. Head to freshstartsregistry.com for more info.